One day were Benitsubasa in the forest for training in more close combat, when suddenly she felt the ground was shaking. Only for a few seconds. She thought maybe it was an earthquake. But an earthquake lasts for a bit longer, but this was only for a few seconds, as she almost even lost her balance. After she stood up, she looked around in the forest just looking for where this strange earthquake had come from. As in the distance, she saw a small smoke, or at least some dust, had clouded up. She walked up to this area, and she then saw this strange small robot in an impact crater laying on the bottom of it. She was very curious about this robot, but at the same time, she wondered would she even consider to walk up to this or just run away, because who knows about this robot would react if they saw her. It could start immediately being firing at her, or it could just be basically be dead. But as she was looking at it and trying to figure out what to do, it slowly stood up, and she had only one option now. It was to hide before it saw her. But just as it usually hides behind some trees, it actually saw her and asked her who is she and where is he. She explained her name and that he was in Japan. And she asked the same thing, like who is he and what is he and where he's from. He said his name is Francie and he is a Decepticon from the planet Cybertron. Francie even asked Benitsubasa about more about her place in Japan. And she even asked him how he ended up in Japan in the first place, if he was from the planet Cybertron. But he told her that he had been on Earth for at least several years, been fighting against his enemy by the name Autobots. They are basically the same kind as he, but with different names. And she has told him that she has never heard about Decepticons or even Autobots or even of giant robots fighting on Earth in the past or ever. She was really surprised at seeing him, but surprised herself. But then she asked if he had been on Earth, where did he came from after he fell from the sky? The last he did remember that he was in a fight against the Autobots among his fellow Decepticons, in order to try to control the space bridge. She had never heard about the word space bridge before, and he tried to explain what it was. After this, he then asked her if there was any way where he could stay, because he didn't want to draw any attention to people. All that he knew was there was an old factory or something outside of town where he could stay. He requested that she takes him there, and she has no other choice to do since he has a laser weapon, and so that gives him not much as an opportunity to chance to change. So she did. And after that they arrived to this factory, he thought this could be a good place to stay for temporarily. But there was something about her that he requested that they could spend more time. Just he wanted to know more about this place. And what else could she do? She was afraid that he would get in town and start flying around and trying to demand her that she showed up. So she promised, but she couldn't go the next day because she has a lot of training to do. So she promised the day after, and he was okay with that. But around the same time when she came back to the factory, she saw him doing some looks like exercising, and she asked him more about himself and his insane. But then Francie told her that around the same time after that during fights, he had been betrayed by Decepticons, or he felt betrayed by them because they didn't take him seriously as a Decepticon. They often asked him to do all the maintenance works, like cleaning, take care of the stores, the food, the energy, even all the maintenance of the base, and even trying to make sure that everything was perfect. If he wasn't, he would be punished severely, and in a worst case, even perhaps to be destroyed. And he could not stand that anymore. So he decided maybe it was best that he end up someplace where the others could not find him. Even that he had did send wanted to try to broadcast a signal so the others could find him. But he didn't. But he actually did that only short time after he landed, been living in Japan for only about a week or so. But no response back. Even he tried for every single day for a week, but no answer. That made the conclusion to him that the other Decepticons didn't even care about him anymore. So he decided to just stay there. And since now he was free to do what he wanted, so he decided to stay in Japan forever. But what about something about his decision though? Now he was free to do anything he wanted. What will he do? And for what reason? But there was something about him though, and on his friendship with supposed friendship with Benitsubasa. Benitsubasa, she was really surprised that he wanted to have her as a friend, though there weren't much else to do when she was not training and or spending some time with her friends. But everything got all of this would change. After that, he had asked her not to reveal anything about him for her friends or anyone else because he had no idea how people react when seeing a strange alien robot approaching the city or perhaps living nearby. And she probably could only imagine how people react, like freaking out. The people were like massive panic around the city. The military probably were called in, and it was one of the worst case scenario that you could imagine, though. But everything would start changing for the worse or something for the odd. For about only 2 weeks later, when Benny Tsubasa were in town, she actually started hearing this strange sound. And suddenly she heard a loud scream, and this building where she was close by to apparently was about to collapse. And she had been giving some sort of calling, or at least some sort of kind of a watch from Francie to be in constant contact with. She immediately told them about this disaster. If there was anything he could do, he probably would have been doing it now. But he said he couldn't because of how the people react. But if he wanted to live here, people will eventually at some point find him. Because who knows, if people want to explore this old factory, what would they do if they found him? Then they all both agree this was something that they had to do. If he did save the people, he would be claimed as a hero, and that would make him someone people to like him. And so for just only for a second after she said that, he left the factory immediately. And in fact, only a few seconds later, he was in town and was able to stop the building from collapsing even more, but only for temporarily. As he was doing that, the firefighters and other people were able to save the people inside. And the people in town, including bystanders and the news reporters, were really eager to interview him. After all the interview, his time with the people in town was starting to get better though. He was actually quickly accepted as a hero. And as the worst scenario that for Benny Subasa had, that the military would capture him and try to do some experiments on him, but that never happened. Because now he was a local hero and the people would not go along with to allow him to do some experiments. But there were scientists that were allowed by him to do some exam, like to figure out how he even works. But there were no severe tests, like mostly scans and take samples on his metal, what he's made of. And even after all this respect and love for people in town, he became actually a very local hero of most other people. And he even showed up for a lot of interviews by the news stations, or even went to schools for practice for any of them. But there were one thing that he did like the most of, and was spending time with Benitsubasa. Benitsubasa herself had a little bit some explanation to do to her friends after that they found out she knew about Francie. But what can she do? She told them exactly what she knows. And of course, her time with Francie were at first a little bit rocky, because he requested her not to reveal him, but now the people did know about him, she didn't matter about anymore. But he wanted her just to be herself. But after they had been friends for nearly about 2 years, something did happen between them. Even all that time they together, Francie had started to like Benitsubasa even more and more for each single day though. They were still very close friends, and one day he had asked her if she was seeing in some sense someone at the moment. She was a bit surprised that even he asked that, but he said no. She said no. He then asked if she would have been dating like him, if she had if it was possible. She was a little bit honestly surprised about this question, but she honestly answered that she would. After all, since he has been a very cool friend to her, and she wouldn't mind to be dating her just to see if that even worked, because who knows, maybe it didn't work out as they thought. But then he asked her if she would like to date. So she said yes. What did they do most for the time though? Well, they spent a lot of time at the factory which he had restored, watching some movies together, laughing, and just having a great time. Even her friends were not aware about his dating after only about 2 weeks though. But they were about something about their relationship at first. They had been seen dating for nearly 2 weeks after she first asked when he asked her out. There was something about him though for Benitsubasa. There was something about him that she couldn't even put a finger on it. He was very handsome in mind, like he was honestly compassionate. He was funny to be with. He managed to pull her a lot of jokes after he learned, and even though that they couldn't spar in like in a friendly fights, because due to the fact he was a robot and she was a living creature, a living being, which were not impossible because he would only hurt her even greatly than the rest normally do. But they actually did. He managed to make out some training courses for her, like to do train her self close battle combat, and that was something that she's really grateful to help. That he spent time to help her with close combat, but their time being together was something that they never expected even to happen in the first place. Francie had later mentioned to Benitsubasa that he liked her more than just a friend and even more as a girlfriend. And she asked him like if he meant like it to be married. He only said yes, but he was not sure if that was even possible. She said even if it was possible for him to get married, she would. But she was not thinking about marriage at the moment. They had only been dating for only a short time, and he agrees to that. They wanted just to see if there's going to be this new relationship will work out, because they both want to have this to be at least long term before even considering to be take a next step or something. But there were about something about this that this relationship were almost getting broken up. One day when Benitsubasa were in town talking to a guy, when Francie did see that. But he wasn't jealous at first because he knows that she often talks to some she has several guy friends. But this guy were a little bit too different. He was hugging her twice and make her laugh, but it was common for friends to make her laugh, so he didn't pay much attention to that. But this one more different. He can hear that he actually had asked her out on a date twice at the same time. Tried to convince her to go out with him, but she said no, that she would only be dating this better guy, this guy, or at least supposed to be a guy. And then he asked if it was this robot she mentioned, and she said yes. Then he said, how can this relationship work? Because you're a secretary and he's a robot. How does it even work out? Like, he is not a living creature, and even if you were been dating, how were things perfectly out? You're not like kissing him or anything like that. And that made her a little bit angry. She said but angry tone, that is not your business. That's mine and you won't have to find out. And that made Francie even more proud to have with him. And he didn't mention that he didn't notice her talking to this guy because he didn't want to make her more upset or believing that he was following her or something. So he did mention it. But his time with Benitsubasa after this was just really strongly. She had no mind to be with him after all because he had been so kind to her. And after they'd been dating for nearly about 2 years, they actually had they actually lived together in the factory. And she didn't mind living there though. She could have a lot of practice in the building for close combat, or she could train in the forest. Just having a great time with him was the best that she ever had. Until one day when he asked her if she wanted to be engaged. Even if it meant that they could not be married. And she didn't mind to be engaged. And they were engaged now. And all the friends said that she was cheering for their happiness about being engaged. But whereabouts some of the friends did actually ask if it could be possible to get married, but then Benitsubasa said that she didn't have no idea. But Matsu, one of her friends, did mention they were possible. So they decided to get married sometimes in the summer the next year, and which they did. They even had a small ceremony, which in a traditional Japanese wedding. But even after this wedding happened, they actually celebrated the honeymoon on a road trip, just for them both. But when they came back, everything was just like normal. They were really happy to be with each other and get married though. But after they'd been married for about 3 years, they wanted to have a family, but they have no idea if it was possible for them to be adopting a family, since Francie was a robot. But they asked some adoption centers, and they actually did were approved, since both were local heroes and they had a lot of protection to the people in town, so they were actually accepted to be adopting. So they decided to adopt two boys. One was about 3 years old, another one was only four brothers. And they both loved their sons even so much. Francie, he loved his boys and he spent so much time with them, like telling us stories about his time on Cybertron, of the other worlds we've been seeing, and and even telling him how he saved the people in the building when it was about to collapse, and he was just love his time to be with Benitsubasa. Benitsubasa, she loved her husband even so strongly. Despite there were some differences between them, like he's a robot and that she's a living being, but they love each other didn't matter. As long as they love each other so strong, that was all that was mattered for them both. And that's how Francie and Benitsubasa found a true love and a family together. The end.